Go ahead and get started today. Today we have a couple of presenters here with us to talk about hyperconverged servers and how they can be the key to your CTO success. And before we do that, if you'll go to our resource page, you can find this resource from today, along with all of our other Tech Talks, webinars, newsletters, and everything else that we have to offer there on our resource page, easily all in one place for you. So today we do have, of course, Henry here with us, who is our president, and of course has been doing cybersecurity IT solutions for 25 years plus. And also joining us, we have our two experts from Scale Computing. We have Nate, who is the regional sales manager at Scale. And then also we have joining us Jason Anderson, who is our senior solutions architect. And he has been doing IT solutions for 26 years. So combined, they've got at least 50 plus years with IT solutions. So we should have a great webinar for you today. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Henry to get us started.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Stephanie. I should always check. Can y'all see my screen okay
Yes,
before we get
sir. We
rolling
got
too?
you. We got you.
Awesome. Very good. I've made that mistake most of the time. So thank you all so much for joining me. And let me just say to Nate and Jason with Scale, we appreciate y'all coming on and explaining what's a fairly complicated subject to our audience and to my customers. We're just very excited about the partnership that y'all have constantly demonstrated to turnkey solutions and the products and the services that you've brought to us and to our clients. So we're excited about that. If y'all will hang on for everybody that's watching, if you'll hang on till the end, we'll explain a little bit more about how to, at a minimum, probably get a free Fitbit out of this. But the big stuff is we've got a whole lot of other much bigger value adds to bring to the table for you. So hang tight for this. It's cool, but some of the other things we're going to show you will just blow that out of the water. Look, today we're going to talk about some big stuff, and some of it I can explain easily, and some of it I've got great, phenomenal experts here with me to do this, and Nate and Jason. At a high level, what we see in talking with our clients across the US is that there are some real pressures being weighed down on IT departments. They're asked to kind of do the impossible with do more with less on a day-to-day basis. We're going to dig a little bit into what the Scale solution is. We're going to start talking about how it compares to Hyper-V and VMware and SANS and all the things that we're normally cobbling together in the big data closets and in those 62U rack cabinets that you've got in there. So we're going to compare it to kind of the a little bit more traditional architecture. We're going to talk a little bit about the process of what it looks like in switching to Scale. So we'll explain it, and then we'll show you how easy it is to switch over. And in the spirit of just absolute transparency, we're going to show you some real world client examples from both Turnkey Solutions client base and Scale's client base, which is a lot bigger in terms of people using Scale, obviously. So we've got a lot to cover today, and I think it's going to be a really powerful set of information for you. So hang tight. Look, on that first thing, there's a tremendous amount of articles that you can look at, and you don't have to look far. If you're an IT director, or you're a CTO, or a CIO, or a CFO, any of those positions where you're really looking at IT budgets and the company's overall goals, there's just 4,000 articles out there from April 2024 and forward, explaining kind of the pressures that we're all facing as IT directors. It's getting bonkers. One of the articles that I figured kind of explains it fairly well is one from CIO. And they kind of navigated just basically like 8 overall pressures. Number one, just navigating economic uncertainty that they highlighted. This is a challenge that IT leaders and IT directors or CTOs or CIOs are facing. Two, creating a strong work culture. We're all struggling with hiring and the budgets around that, and finding people that are willing to work, that have the skill sets, that will show up, 4 days out of five. The work from home thing made everything just kind of a mess. Delayed decision making. That's one of the things that we face on a nonstop basis with decision makers at the companies that we work with, not really feeling comfortable with any decision. So sometimes they make the decision of, let's punt this decision down the road. Security, but on a budget. Their fourth thing that CIO brought up, and again, there's so many other articles that kind of say the same things, and they may put them in different order, but I really resonated with this article because it's stuff that we see on a day-to-day basis. Uh, Security on a budget. And a few years ago, nobody could spend enough, it felt like, on security, and we were seeing people spending more and more on SIM and SOC and 24/7 365 monitoring, and if you had a security tool for sale, they were buying. And now we're really feeling a pullback from that, where people are saying, okay, I need to be secure, but I also need to protect my budget. And so we're seeing people spend less and less, and I think that's a nationwide or even global trend. Number five, balancing cost and agility. Like, we can spend more money on things, but we've got to be able to be flexible. Upskilling to take advantage of artificial intelligence. Like, instead of spending money on training people on how to take care of the VMware or take care of the switches or the Wi-Fi or how to do some of these kind of infrastructure costs, now we're looking at IT departments being asked to be the experts inside the company on artificial intelligence, and how do we overhaul workflows and productivity around that. Dealing with new regulations. I don't know about y'all, but compliance is a huge push, and everybody's coming to us asking, hey, how do we comply with not only our insurance applications, which have gone from 4 questions to 4 pages? How do we deal with this new PCI or FTC or SEC regulation? How do we comply with some of the new things that the Health and Human Services has passed, or this state has passed the new data protection laws? So that's gone through the roof. And finally, mixing human and machine intelligence, which feels kind of the same as that AI conversation, but implementation of it, and making all of our tools talk with AI or Chat GPT or whatever, Bard. The actual implementation of it is being forced on IT directors. So we face these in our business. We face these together with our clients, and I feel like this article did a fairly good job of maybe explaining some of the reasons why you, as an IT director or a CTO or a C-level person in your organization, are feeling some real stress. And I feel like it's not artificial. We're feeling some real pressures, and it's getting to feel like a whole lot nowadays. And I'm excited to tell you we've got a solution for the vast majority of this. One of the things we're going to walk through here, and hope you see as we walk through the scale solution, is it's going to help you with some economic uncertainty. We're going to save some money on your spending if you've got an IT infrastructure of any size. We're going to help you create freedom in that budget so that you can go back and spend what you need on security. We're going to help you balance cost with agility. Watch for some of the things that Nate and Jason are going to talk about in terms of edge computing and disaster recovery. The scale computing solution that we're going to walk through has incredible flexibility. We use it ourselves at Turnkey Solutions. We use it with a huge chunk of our clients where they've got similar size infrastructures, and just the ability to say, okay, this is what we bought it for, but now we're going to switch and use it for this over here for a whole different business goal is just incredible. We've really appreciated that. Upskilling to take advantage of AI. I'm going to show you how simple, or rather, Jason's going to show you how simple it is to use, and how you don't need to add a huge chunk of skills to learn how to do this, or you don't need to maintain skills on Hyper-V or VMware or whatever the platforms are. So now you can spend some time and resources on learning those new technologies like AI, dealing with new regulations, the data security, data portability. It's going to give you time and freedom to be able to go spend time on that, creating a strong work culture. If I can show your technicians how easy it is to handle the important things of keeping your infrastructure running, if I can show them that we're investing in the latest and greatest technologies, not bleeding edge, but cutting edge, if I can show them how we're really investing in all these other agendas for the IT directors, then they get the excitement of, hey, this company's moving forward. We're not just stuck dealing with Windows 2008 on a single Dell server in a closet filled with dust. We're actually moving forward and we're using the new stuff. So I'm a part of an organization that's dynamic and growing. And I'm gonna show all of these things in a way that I really do feel like if we can get the value proposition expressed clearly to your CTO, to the CFO, to the decision makers at the company, if they'll spend the time to understand what we're really proposing here, the decision's a no-brainer. And then maybe you can spend some time on the, mix in human and machine intelligence, once we've solved some of these other problems. But I think what we're going to show here, guys, is that your servers are such a huge chunk of your expense in terms of HR and power and licensing and machines and just all the stuff, that if we can do that better, if we can do that in a way that takes advantage of today's 2024 technology and not really rely on stuff that's dated, we've got an opportunity to move the organization, to move your organization in the right direction. Now, I say all that, and I really want to just hand it over to Nate to explain a little bit about scale. But before we dig in real hard on that, before I completely hand it over to you, Nate, let me just tell you that we've been a partner with Scale for a long time now, years and years. We have used their equipment. We have been to their partner conferences. We have met the company from top to bottom. I've had an opportunity, as have my other partners, to sit down and drink coffee with the CEO and explain our concerns and our goals, and he listened, and the whole company has just demonstrated for years and years this commitment to not only to us and our ability to support and use and share this well, but also to our clients. And it has been really huge. So if there's no other cert that y'all ever win, let me just tell you, you've won it. You've been one of the very, very few that I can list on like 5 fingers, companies that we've worked with in 25 years of doing this as turnkey solutions that has demonstrated this level of partnership commitment and commitment to the clients. So that's the only award that really mattered to me. These back it up. So Nate, tell us about, what the rest of the world sees in Scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Henry, we appreciate the partnership. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We just got back from our platform summit in Las Vegas. And our CEO and co-founder, Jeff Reedy, Scale's tagline is simplicity engineered, right? But it is our goal to be best ever, whether that be support, our relationships with our partners or with our customers, right? That his goal, and this is directly from him, that when you retire, right? Not you specifically, Henry, but anybody that works with us when they retire, right? And somebody comes up, news reporter with a microphone, and says, hey, who's the best vendor, right? Manufacturer, partner that you ever got the chance to work with in your career? That Scale Computing is that answer. So we appreciate, the partnership. We appreciate the opportunity getting to serve our customers, right? And put forth a solution that not only gives time back to the administrators and, the IT directors and the CTO's day, but helps the bottom line and lets the focus shift elsewhere, right? So with that being said, my goal here is to give everyone a little bit of background on who Scale Computing is. You can see the fancy awards here, and there are far more than that. These awards specifically are voted on by partners and customers. So this is not something that is paid to win. People like us. And when they adopt scale, they stick with scale. So I'll give you a little bit of background to who we are, what we do, how it might be a little bit different from an infrastructure side than you're used to. And then Jason Anderson, our senior solutions architect, will take you through a high level overview of what the GUI looks like, how easy it is to create virtual machines, and how we can protect that data. Henry mentioned backups because we all know hurricane season is approaching, and backups are a big hot topic with security. So we'll get into all of that here. Henry, you can go ahead and flip to the next slide when you're ready. Oh, look at that transition. So let's talk scale computing. For those that are not familiar, scale computing, we are in the hyperconvergence realm, hyperconverged infrastructure and edge computing. We've been leading at the forefront of that for over a decade now. VMware is the hot topic right now with their acquisition by Broadcom. Broadcom's focus is on their top 600 customers, and a lot of people out there are looking for alternatives. That's what this is. Scale was founded in 2008. We're a storage company, right? We were not as large as we are now, and not as adept, but we've continued to innovate to get to where we are today. The entire idea behind the solution that we're discussing, that you'll see here in just a few minutes, was to create something that was easy to run your applications, to run your workloads. Our co-founders realized that modern virtualization, was starting to become complex, difficult to manage, right? And it was becoming expensive. And so the goal behind this was to give you a single pane of glass for management, 3 clicks or less, to create, spin up VMs, clones, replication, all of that, to give you time back in the day, especially for the leaner IT staffs. This is a VMware Hyper-V, Nutanix, physical server replacement. The big thing to note with scale and what makes us different is that this runs on our own patented hypervisor. So the software under the covers is what makes the engine tick. That's the secret sauce. So we are the software and the hardware combined. So long gone are the days of, I need to go buy these hosts, I need to go pay for all this licensing, right? I need to have a SAN, I need to route this across my switching layer. That goes away with us, and I'll touch on that here in a second. We are based in Indianapolis, Indiana. We have our R&D out in San Francisco and offices all across the globe. I talk about being around for a little over a decade. We do have customers running in over 60 countries. We've deployed over 15,000 systems to date, and that is continuing to grow. I talked about the patented software, right? Which is what makes the engine tick. And you'll see some of our larger customers up on the top left of your screen there. The core of our business is in the mid-market. I talk about the leaner IT staffs, right? Easy to manage, easy to administer. So we have customers across every vertical imaginable: state and local governments, K-12, manufacturing, nonprofit, finance. And the reason we're able to fit, whether it be a large core data center or very small, footprint out in rural USA, right? Is because everything that we do from a configuration and a technical standpoint is built to order. So it is not, you have option 1, 2, 3. We right size these solutions with partners like Turnkey, right? And with our customers to ensure that we're putting a solution in place that not only solves the challenges of today, but sets you up for the life cycle of the nodes themselves, right? To anticipate any growth down the line. Again, all giving you the peace of mind, right? Moving forward and future-proofing yourself for anything that may come down the line. As we all know, technology changes every 30 seconds is what it seems like. I'm trying to think, from here on this specific slide, I'm going to assume, those that are watching this are relatively familiar with the Dells and the Supermicros and the Intels of the world, right? We do work with 2 in particular on this sheet that I do want to briefly touch on, that can bring some additional value alongside the scale stack. Parallels is the first one. From a virtual desktop standpoint, VDI standpoint, right? This was big during COVID. and it's still big as we see customers continue to adopt a solution that, switches to virtual desktops. This is an alliance partner of ours that's grown very similarly to Scale. We do have the ability to be the first line of support for that and can include that in any projects we're working. And then Acronis, from a backup software standpoint, most backup softwares will work on Scale. But if you want that granular VM level integration, Acronis is going to be the one there. It can run agent-based or agentless with Scale. Again, first line of support. So we are trying to make this, no pun intended, a turnkey solution for our customers. Now, we do have backup capability, data protection capabilities that are inherent to the system itself, but some organizations are looking for a secondary or tertiary layer, right? And that's where we would pull Acronis in. So all of that being said, I think you can flip me over to the next slide, Henry, and I'll keep chugging along. Hyperconvergence to level set. Again, for those that are not familiar, this has been a buzzword for the last 10 years or so. Not as much now, but we define true hyperconvergence at scale as the integration of all three layers of your infrastructure into a single solution architecture. So that exact definition on the screen. So we are taking your compute, your storage resources, and the virtualization software piece, and we're layering that and bringing it into a single solution. And I'll illustrate that on the next slide. I am a visual learner. It's usually a little bit easier. But this is how virtualization has been done for the last few decades, right? This is what VMware looks like. You've got your VMs. Those are sitting on top of host servers. You're routing VMware across all that, and then it's coming back to your switching layer, and then maybe you've got a SAN out there, what I had mentioned earlier, right? We're taking this complexity and all of these layers of the infrastructure, and we are bringing that down into, and we started at 3 nodes for high availability purposes. I will touch on that, but this would be a scale solution. So we are consolidating your resources, right? We're consolidating the between each of those layers into a stack to run your applications. A little bit further from a technical standpoint.
Should I go to the next slide?
Yep. You were good to switch. There it goes. Slowly but surely. So to further illustrate that, I talked about the hops between all of those layers of your infrastructure, right? Henry had introduced myself, and I could have mentioned this from the get-go. I have been at Scale for going over 4 years now. And while I am the regional sales manager, right, Jason is my right-hand man from a technical standpoint. However, this solution is simple. And one thing that I do like to hit home on here is very little overhead with a Scale solution, right? So we're shortening that IO path between all of those different layers. There is no controller VM with Scale. So from a resource standpoint, right, in that VSA model, you may need to consume 250 gig of RAM and 10 cores, just to turn the lights on, just to keep the lights on. That goes away with us. We don't have that. And so you're able to run your workloads and run that infrastructure stack, right, with fewer resources in most cases than you would in a traditional VSA setup. That is because of the way that we do our integrated HCI model. That is because of the software under the covers. But I do like to hit home on this, and Jason will be able to illustrate that a little bit more once he gets into the GUI itself. You can go to the next one, Henry. So to sum up, everything that I've been talking about here, these are the 4 pillars of Scale. Simplicity is something I mentioned right at the beginning. From setup to implementation, there is not going to be an easier solution out there for you on the market. Everything is going to come pre-configured from a hardware standpoint, along with the software image, right? Hardest part about getting Scale running, and I think Henry and the turnkey folks can attest to this, is unboxing those things, racking, stacking, powering on, right? Our customers are able to start migrating existing workloads from another environment, right? Or spinning up new VMs in less than an hour. And then from a management standpoint, it is all located on a single pane of glass. So there's nothing easier out there. Our customers will attest to that. Our partners will attest to that. And it goes back to everything that I've been talking about for the last 5 or 10 minutes. Scalability is the next one, pun intended here, or at least I say the pun is intended. Scale computing, scalability. I like to tell people to think of these nodes. And when I say nodes, I mean servers, hosts, however you define them, right? Think of the hardware piece as Lego blocks. So we do start, a cluster at 3 nodes. And while those nodes may have identical resources, if you have some unexpected growth, right, we know that we can cover that. They can be mixed and matched after those initial 3 nodes in the cluster. Other vendors out there in this space may require you to add a like node, right, or a matching node that you may not need. You may come back and say, hey, I just need, more storage, right? I don't necessarily need all the compute power I had before, but those come at a hefty price point, right? With us, we can mix and match these things. And then the beauty of us being the software and the hardware, right, is that everything that we release from a software update standpoint is going to be backwards and forwards compatible with older gear in a system. So as long as that is under its support contract, you don't have any issues there. From an update standpoint on both the software and the hardware, it is one click update. You are updating the software and the hardware itself. Jason's going to show that when he gets into the GUI. But again, very, very scalable, depending on the organization's needs. Affordability here, complete stack owner. This is the most important thing to note right here. So the hardware that we sell, while it is OEM to build to order, it's passed through. So there is little uplift on the hardware, and then simple software licensing. You hear the VTAX, right? VMware. Software licensing seems like it continues to increase every single month that I see what competitors are quoting. We do not have tiers to our licensing. There is no advanced, beginner, intermediate, second advanced type tier of our software licensing. It is a support contract, and it is dictated by the core count. That is all it is. We do not exclude feature sets. Every feature set that, Jason's going to touch on here, and if we get the opportunity for another demo down the line that's more tailor-made, everything that you see in the GUI comes with scale, right? You don't have to pay for anything additional. The other thing I do like to mention here, and is important to note, I talked about how lean it is from a hardware resource standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using less resources to run your data center, then you're not paying for the extra resources that you're going to buy, in a traditional setup. That is also going to put money back in the pocket. So we're very competitive in the market. It's a very cost-effective solution, not just on the software side, but also on the hardware side. And then high availability, I think, is most important here. Having fault tolerance built into this is critical. There's not a single point of failure in a scale stack. We're mirroring and wide striping the data across all the nodes in the cluster, which means that for our customers, if you lose a drive, if 2 drives fail, if an entire node were to go down, you are going to continue to operate at full capabilities and capacity with no interruption to your end users. It is architected that way on purpose. And if a hardware failure does happen, you call scale support and we send you a new drive, new power supply, or an entire new node. If the entire node goes down, next day, business error. It is pre-configured just like it was when you got the original nodes. And then you initialize that into the cluster, you're back up at full strength with 3 nodes. So, Henry, you're good to get to the next slide from here.
Before we go from there, I think one of the things that you touched on, but we've seen in the real world under affordability, Nate, is like we go literally from 42U racks with 2 batteries and 2 PDUs and all the air conditioning that requires and all the insane amount of electricity that requires, down to 6U and 1 battery and half or a third of the air conditioning. Just the other stuff that you can shed when you get down to just a highly efficient stack, like what Scale has engineered here, is it just keeps coming. We just keep seeing more and more and more benefits down the road. So we have enjoyed seeing empty and completely powered off racks at our clients' environments, and they're like, I don't know, what do we do with this? I don't know. We can
Yeah,
store your old files in there or something.
it's a good problem to have, though.
Yeah,
It's a
it's a
good
great
problem to have,
problem.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the only, and that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that, right? There's obviously cost savings associated with the infrastructure side of things, but when you start talking power, you start talking cooling, these are hidden costs, right? That,
Yep.
that can be factored in, when somebody makes the move here. And is not always seen at the get-go, but it is something that we hear, every time a new customer adopts the solution. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Um, the only other thing that I think I really need to hit on here to give an idea of scale, right? We talked backup, we talked DR. Jason's going to show you how you can create snapshots, how you can clone those, right, to another scale instance and spin those up into fully functioning VMs. There are many ways to do backup in DR. I say that it is subjective, right? Because depending on the organization's needs, you may have more than one requirement for backups, right? You may have more than one requirement for DR. We've got customers that will run a production environment and replicate those to a single node offsite, or maybe it's a fully functioning cluster, right? And those are replicating between each other. Maybe they've got a Cronus layered on top of that, right? And then sending those backups to the cloud target of their choosing. We have a DR as a service offering that I did not touch on. In the event that the entire stack were to go down, you would call scale and we would spin up that instance in Google Cloud. It would look like scale, breathe like scale, wouldn't have anything to do with Google Cloud. That's just where it lives. So, or a combination of all four of those things I just mentioned, right? We can get very creative when it comes to DR and fill those needs. And then if you want to hit that last slide there, Henry, it doesn't always have to match. I talked about, the hardware side of things. It's not just going to be these giant rack mount servers. We fit on things as small as our HE100 series. These are Intel NUCs or Asus NUCs. And if anyone is familiar, these are the size of an Apple TV, right? We can run the entire solution on the NUCs. We've got 1U half depth chassis, your traditional 1U rack mount servers, and go all the way up to the big 5000 series, 2U data center servers, and any combination of in between. This interface doesn't change, software doesn't change, right? It is just the hardware footprint. So we can get very small. If you start talking very minimal resource usage, small applications, run those on those micro edge servers, right? You don't need to put one giant server in there and not have any redundancy. We can give you a fully redundant cluster with a footprint that you can put under a desk, right? So we can get very flexible with what we're doing. That kind of sums up everything that I've got, Henry. Unless you've got anything, I think we toss this thing
Yeah.
over to Jason so they can see
Yeah.
what it looks like.
Jason, you can just take over the screen sharing and we'll see what you got. This is exciting. This is the part where it really gets fun.
You may be muted, Jason.
Oh yeah, Jason, you're muted.
I am. Sorry about that, guys. I was
All good.
having a little bit of a bout with a cough, and so I wanted to be sure I was muted while Nate and Henry were talking. So
At least you're sharing your screen. You're doing better than I usually do.
appreciate the heads up there. Right. So anyway, so yeah, thanks, guys. That really helps set the table for what I want to show, and we're just going to go through a few of the high level talking points and show a few of the common tasks in the GUI. And just, what I hope to articulate and illustrate is just how straightforward this is, how much overhead it could take off your day-to-day from an administration standpoint as well. And, if you think of the entire, web GUI that we would generally do, this may be kind of a trailer version of it. So we can certainly reconvene at another time, hopefully have a deeper conversation and do a full, complete demo as time allows. But the first thing I want to talk about was scale. And a lot of this echoes a lot of what Nate touched on, but the core of what we're trying to do is simplify your IT infrastructure. And we want to achieve that by giving you a platform that's easy to run your applications. So we're trying to, make it a very easy situation to create VMs, install the OS, deploy your applications. When you think of us and how we're going to be deployed from day one, everything's going to start off from a production standpoint. Well, I say everything, a vast majority of everything will start off in a 3-node cluster. And we're going to design this, N+1 high availability. And one of the ways we accomplish that is by way of how our data is written. So as you see on this slide, we'll go ahead and illustrate this slide. You can see the blocks written to the virtual disks, then subsequently mirrored to 2 nodes of the cluster. This is the case regardless if you have a 3-node cluster all the way up to an 8-node cluster, your blocks are going to be mirrored on 2 nodes. Now, what that means is if node 1 is lost, the blocks necessary to run those VMs are present on node 2, 3, all the way, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, one of the other nodes of the cluster. Additionally, the memory calculation comes into play with the high availability. But, just overall, we're going to size you out from a resource perspective to withstand the loss of a node. Now, node failures are not common. However, hardware does fail. If there is a node failure, it is a situation. It's next business day. You'll have a new node out there reintegrated with the cluster back at full strength. But we want to, do everything we can to avoid any interruption of service or any downtime in your environment. A couple other things as you get more familiar with Scale, right? So it's a proprietary OS, proprietary hypervisor. Everything is native to Scale. So there's going to be some terminology that's also native to us. And one of those is Scribe. So you see here on the slide, Scribe virtual disk, Scribe data placement. When we're talking Scribe, we mean Scale Compute Reliable Independent Block Engine. This is the storage management layer that's embedded in our OS. And basically what it does is it treats all the storage in your cluster as a single pool. So all the individual nodes have their local storage attached to it. This consolidates that into a single logical pool. The benefits of that come from the intelligent distribution of the blocks across the cluster, and then the end result is just maximizing the availability and performance of all your VMs. Another term or another feature set you'll hear quite a bit is heat. This is valid on tiered systems, and by tiered system, I mean a tier of spinning disk and a tier of flash, whether that be SSD or NVMe. And what heat does, hypercore enhanced automated tiering, as you see at the top of the slide. And what this does is monitor the data access and create a dynamic mapping of active data blocks, and then it moves those blocks off and on of the flash tier as it sees fit. Now, you can sit back and let the system manage it, or if you have certain workloads that are more performance-centric, you certainly can have some manual intervention and give them a higher prioritization. Now, the flip side to this is if you go all NVMe or all flash on a very high-performing system, it makes this a moot point. So, but it is a feature, and it is you'll see the term heat thrown around quite a bit as you gain more familiarity with Scale. So, without further ado, I will go ahead and jump into the GUI. Hopefully everybody can see that screen. This is going to be what you see, regardless of what line in the portfolio you're using, all the way from those, Intel NUCs, all the way up to the full TU rack mount servers. Our GUI looks the same. All those systems are compatible in terms of being able to replicate with each other as well. And when we log into the GUI, the first thing I point out here, I call these our gas gauges, right? So you log in, and you get a real-time CPU utilization. This is going to vary depending on what's going on the cluster. You're going to get the RAM utilization. Now, the way we do RAM is a little bit different from some of our counterparts. We fat provision the RAM, and we do that so once it's provisioned out to a VM, it's considered used. It allows a lot of predictability in determining where you stand from a high availability perspective, should you incur any kind of hardware failure. Disk is done in the opposite manner. So with disk, it is then provisioned. You can provision storage out to your heart's content, and it's only going to be impacted as data is written on the cluster. Additionally, you'll see some performance metrics, IOPS, and latency over here. And so again, these are going to vary again pretty drastically depending on what's happening on the cluster. And then we'll move over here to the right, and you'll see this support chat feature. Our support is something we take a lot of pride in. So when you're calling support, obviously all out of Indianapolis, Indiana, the average hold time to talk to an engineer is an astonishing 13 seconds. I was blown away when I saw that, having lived, and dealt with other vendors across the years. 13-second average hold time to speak to an engineer, and then the support chat is 2 minutes. So support chat, maybe you're in a situation where your cell signal is not great, or you're in a data center where it may just be a little bit too noisy to carry on a coherent conversation. This gives you the outlet to go ahead and get a support case started as needed. And just, ultimately, we're just trying to give you as many avenues as possible to shorten your time to resolution with any kind of issue you might have. Across the middle here, these are indicative of the physical nodes of the cluster. And we're going to go over real quick to Control Center, and I'm going to touch on one area of this, and that is the updates. Unfortunately, there's not an update available. As you see, your cluster is up to date. If there was an update, you would have a description, the version, kind of an estimated duration here, and then ultimately there would be a button to apply, click to apply the update. Now, the good thing about our updates, as Nate said, it's one scale update. Another good thing about it is, with being in high availability mode, you're not going to have to schedule these updates at the most inconvenient time possible for you personally. It's going to be a non-intrusive, non-impactful experience, because what's going to happen once you click this update, it's going to go to the first node of your cluster. It's going to evacuate the VMs off node 1, update it, restart it, bring it back up, and then rinse and repeat. But when I say evacuate, it's a clean move from node to node. If there is, a VM or a application that's very latency sensitive, you certainly have the ability, if you want to kind of do a ping test or test that move process outside of the realm of an update, to kind of make sure that there's not going to be any kind of impact. You certainly can test that out, but it is a clean move. And you have the ability to manually do that, like I said, before the update, just to kind of test that process out. So again, free yourself up from coming in on, 10 p.m. Friday night or spending 8 hours Saturday. That's another thing. The duration of these updates is about 20 to 40 minutes per node. I hear horror stories, all the time of others, multi-hour updates that span, stretch the entire course of a weekend. That's not us. We're very straightforward. We're wanting to, essentially be a solution you kind of set and forget, and, use it as you need to create VMs and deploy workloads. So now that, we kind of looked at the updates. Now the whole point of this, right, is creating VMs and ultimately just, deploying your applications on them. So before we do that, I will speak to migration just briefly. So obviously migration is critical. Moving from what you're on to our platform, we do it every single day. If we weren't very sound in our migration practices and turnkey wasn't very sound, it would be a challenge. But we've got a lot of different options, and we can address those really. But rest assured, we move folks from VMware, physicals, Hyper-V, whatever your current platform you may be, over to scale every single day. So to create a VM, all you're going to do is, we were in Control Center before. This plus sign is the indicator for create a VM. So let's go ahead and click on that, and we'll call this TKS_webinar. I'm going to tag it with my last name. The tagging is just an organizational mechanism. Last name Anderson allows you to search by it or group VMs, which, depending on which way you want to look at it. We'll leave the OS drivers and boot type at default. We're going to give this 2 virtual cores, 4 gig of memory, 100 gig virtual disk. And then I'm going to go to this boot from menu, and I'm going to choose a Windows 2022 server ISO. You upload these ISOs onto the cluster. After it's yours, it's going to come with no ISOs on it. You can build your ISO library. And we're going to go and hit create. So we're going to create this VM, and you'll see here that literally took probably less than 3 seconds and a couple of clicks to create it. The next thing we'll do is go ahead. The power button is here in the upper left. Let's power it on. And then just to kind of show you from a functionality standpoint that it does exist, we'll take a look at the console access. So we'll click on this. You can see here we're on the TKS webinar VM. In just a matter of minutes, there we go. So it's just going to go through its initial boot. It'll transition to the operating system installation. Once that's finished, then it's yours, right? It's your server. You're able to put, whatever applications, whatever functionality you need to on it, you're off and running. That was touched on earlier. I think unboxing it and getting it racked is probably the most challenging part, because it's really less than an hour before you get to the point where you're able to deploy VMs. So we've created a VM, and, that was astonishingly simple, a couple of clicks, couple of seconds. So creating VM is one part, obviously, that you're going to have in a day-to-day. Another part, obviously, depending on geography, it could be more relevant than other parts of the country. But, if a lot of folks on this call are in Louisiana, I'm in Texas, just outside of Houston. So, obviously we encounter hurricane season every year. So being able to have the ability to recover VMs easily is also going to be a big aspect of what we're going to be able to accomplish and what we want to be able to accomplish with our solution in general. So with us, we have these native data protection capabilities built in. There's no additional licensing. So we take snapshots, we replicate snapshots, and from there we can spin up VMs. That's what I want to illustrate now. So just in general, you see the camera icon. This is just if you want to take a one-off snapshot, at your, at a time of your choosing. So say 1:45 on Friday, we want to take a snapshot. We'll just call this TKS_snap. There we go. We took it. That's great. You can take it whenever you want. Now, if you're really wanting to utilize snapshots, you're probably going to think about it a little more strategically in that, hey, I want to have these on a schedule. I want to know when they're going to be taken, how frequently they're going to be taken, and how long I want to keep them for. So to do that, we're going to touch on schedules. So we go back to Control Center, and we're going to create a schedule. So we're going to add this here, and we'll just call this TKS_daily. Sorry about that. And we'll go ahead and define our recurrence. For the sake of the demo, I'm going to say daily. You can get much more or less granular. As you can see, minutely, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly. If you're needing to do them minutely, we may want to look at a more real-time replication solution, but the functionality is there. So we're going to do these daily. We're going to take them every day, and we're going to take them at, we'll say 12:45 a.m. We're going to keep these for 7 days. And then we'll just add it, and we'll save it. So all we've done right now is we've created a schedule. Here we are, TKS daily. So let's go back to the VM and tie it to that schedule, because that's really going to be part of our data protection strategy. So we're going to go to the snapshot catalog, which is right here under devices. And we're going to say, select a schedule. So we'll go here. We'll scroll down to that TKS daily that we chose, that we created. And we're going to hit update. So now we're all set. We're in business. The VMs are being snapped every morning at 12:45 a.m. That snapshot's being kept for 7 days. Now, the next phase of this is, okay, let's get those snapshots off-site to another scale instance upon which we can actually do something with them in a recovery standpoint. That's where the replication comes into play. So on your cluster, you predefine replication targets. So replication targets could be another scale cluster, or we will allow single node instances as long as they have a replication partner. So it could be a single node somewhere that's like, hey, this is really just an insurance policy. In case something happens at my main location, we're able to get this spun up. So we'll go here to set up replication, and we're just going to choose the US Goose instance, and we're going to choose replicate. So the replication happens in line with the snapshot schedule. So these are snapped at 12:45 a.m. every morning. Upon completion, then a compressed and encrypted copy of that snapshot is sent to the target of your choosing. So we're on the schedule now. You see there's kind of the snaps that have been set up, and it's setting the replication up at this point. And so that's great. But then what do we do with these at the target side that kind of plays into our recoverability? So we're going to take a look at US Goose, right? So this is the instance we chose to replicate to. And here you see these are the entities tagged under my last name. And you look at this here. So here's TKS webinar. Well, it's not a full VM. This is just sending the snapshot copies over. So we, kind of take a look at this, take a look at the snapshots. Those are still replicating over. So we're going to look at another VM to kind of illustrate this next point, this base demo. And let's say the situation is this, right? We're over here on our initial production. Here's the base demo VM. It's production. It's running. We're replicating the snaps over to the US Goose instance. And the situation occurs, whether it be a problem with the VM itself, a problem with your hardware, a weather-related side issue. Whatever the cause may be, you're in a situation where you need to be able to get VMs spun up in short order and a quick, pretty quick turnaround to be able to keep your guys working, keep your team in business, right? So we're going to take a look at these snapshots, and we're going to see, okay, well, here's our catalog that we have to choose from. These are the snaps that have been taken over the last 7 days. Today's the 26th. So for the sake of conversation, we'll say, okay, well, the most recent instance the snap's been taken was last night, 11:35 p.m. Again, for the sake of discussion, this is a viable recovery point for us. All you have to do is you go over here, you say clone the snapshot. We'll call this base demo clone. It's going to generate a new MAC address, and we hit clone. And in a couple of seconds, it takes that snapshot from 11:35 p.m. last night, takes those contents, and turns it into a fully bootable, writable VM. This VM is in the state that base demo was in at 11:35 p.m. last night, ready to be powered on and reverted back to. Now, again, you can have much more granular occurrences of the snaps. But from a mechanical standpoint and being able to say, hey, this is something that's a snapshot, or i.e. really a backup of sorts, we can take this entity and get it into the state where it's ready to be spun up as a full VM from a previous point in time in a couple of clicks and a couple of seconds, like we just showed. So this is a really compelling feature, in my opinion, especially if you do have, if you are geographically in a situation where there, is a high chance for weather-related events, and if you know something's coming, maybe you spin these off and spin up at another location until it passes. Whatever the situation may be, that's a very straightforward, very easy way to take advantage of our native technology and get these spun up. So that hopefully gives you kind of a sneak peek at some of what we're about. It's again, ease of use, native data protection capabilities, and just kind of want to illustrate, the mechanics of it and how easy that is to go about and kind of operate this and put a DR strategy in place really with our out of the box functionality. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, guys, and I'll kind of kick it back out. Henry, Nate, and just kind of continue on here.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if y'all noticed this, but Jason was exhibiting extreme restraint and not showing all the stuff that we can do here. But that's to do vMotion, DR, set up images and whatnot in VMware or Hyper-V. We would just be getting logged into the console. And I don't know about y'all as well from your experience set, but nobody else that I'm aware of has a chat function inside the GUI where you can immediately talk to a technician. That is mind-blowing. And we really, I just cannot tell you how cool that is and how awesome it is. All right, am I sharing my screen here?
Yep.
Cool.
I can see it.
You talked on it just briefly, Jason. I think there's a lot that we can dig into, but this is a huge thing to understand that, like, I know this is new and I know it's big and different, but can y'all tell like a little bit more detail about what a typical migration looks like?
Yeah, and I didn't. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't want to overlap in anything that that may have been for discussion, but traditionally with our migration, we can be as involved or minimally involved as you need. From a minimally involved standpoint, you have to look at it like we're teaching you how to fish. We're going to take one VM in the environment, create a target VM on the scale side, utilize Carbonite Move, which is the migration tool of choice that we use for most situations. We'll link that up with the source VM, regardless of what platform it is, migrate the contents over, and then work with you to coordinate a cutover for that VM to scale, all the while teaching you the process and making sure you're comfortable with the tool, and then kind of cutting you loose and letting you attack the rest of the environment. On the other extreme of that, we can do it all for you, right? We can do every aspect on every VM. Now, there are some escalated costs involved, but we do have the capabilities of doing, one of them, all of them, or somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll kick it, Nate, if you want to add to that.
You got it all, man.
Right.
Yeah, the easiest way, we provide the migration licensing, right? It's very cost effective. We bundle that in an all you can eat flavor. And everybody that's moving to scale is migrating off of something, right? So, we've been doing this for quite some time. Our post-sales teams, services support, I didn't even touch on that a ton, but that is the bread and butter of what we do. Best in, I talked about best ever, right? That trickles over to support and services. So, from a migration standpoint, we have you covered whether or not we need to handle it all, whether or not you want to handle it all, or maybe there's a subset of some critical VMs you want us to handle, right? We've got it down pat. So,
yep, absolutely. In the interest of time, the migration project 99% of the time is about as short as what we just talked about. Like that it is mind-numbingly how simple, how easy it is to look at. I promised I would go through some quick numbers. Y'all have some pretty cool case studies where you've gone through this project, and we want to get to that too.
Sure.
look, just real world numbers. We've gone through this a lot of times with our customers. One of the grossest projects, biggest, kind of longest sales cycle that we've gone through, I think paints one of the best stories. We had a customer, and this is just kind of pretty a little rounded up. It wasn't exactly $40,000, but a little rounded numbers. But they literally went from 2.5 42U cabinets, 6 APC batteries, 2 independent split air conditioners plus internal HVAC. I mean, it was a huge project. 50 plus VMs running, back-end infrastructure supporting about 400 users. And they had gone from one SAN to another over the last few years. They had one at this time. They had I think like 11 to 13 hypervisors plus a huge SAN. One of the racks was all SAN, by the way. And they were looking at like upgrading their core switches. That was a big project they wanted to get done while we're at it, to go to 10 gig. VMware licensing over the space of 5 years just to keep this thing renewed and up to date was going to be $126,000. Replacing some of the hypervisors over the space of those years, 32 grand as they aged out. The SAN was into life, so replacing that was going to be a little over $500,000 to match specs that I'll show you in just a second. The scale solution was going to be able to bring. They were going to have to bring in their own fiber channel switches. Unlike the scale solution, they were going to have to connect all those hypervisors together back to the SAN. That was going to be huge to replace those. Keeping new employees, which they have to contend with, keeping them trained on the VMware environment, keeping them trained on the SAN environment. All total, this was just shy of 800 grand they were looking at spending over the next 5 years, just for those 3 cabinets. What we eventually were able to explain to them is that, look, okay, those switches that connect all the workstations up, yeah, we want to do that because that's going to make everybody experience faster speeds. But instead of all that stuff, we're looking at like a $223,000 all NVMe node, a 3-node cluster. The migration project, they were like, okay, if we're gonna save all this money, we want somebody to hold our hands and like make it like just whatever time it takes. We don't want to do any of this ourselves as much as we can. So this was a heavy hand-holding migration project. The scale training for them, scale offered it as free, at 0 cost, which is huge. And in the end, what it came up to be is like 290 grand for the project, which a total savings of just over $500,000 over the course of 5 years. This is insane. Their performance went up big time in terms of IOPS and throughput. Air conditioner costs, which for them, their air conditioners and generator and all that stuff, we haven't even factored that into this here. And also, by the way, we haven't factored into this math, the new quote they got from VMware, because VMware didn't know that they had shut down everything. They got so at some point or another, we'll have to freshen this up with the actual VMware costs. That's our experience, just one of a ton. Nate, you had some stories here, and this one's cool too. I love this one.
Yeah, and I know we're getting close on time, so I'll go through these, pretty quickly. I talked about flexibility, right, of the solution. So there are many use cases where scale fits, but 2 in particular that stood out to me, right, as we were, putting together some content to share with you guys, that are recent. One in particular was a medical device manufacturing organization based out of Texas. And their challenge was, hey, we've got all of these manufacturing centers, right? Not just in Texas, right, but across the US. We've got global manufacturing facilities, and we can't run those in the cloud. It's expensive. Latency becomes an issue, right? Security is an issue. We don't have any kind of redundancy with that, right? We can't afford that. So we want to have something that's going to, run the applications locally where they're happening in real time. And, the existing Dell servers in the environment, they have their primary data centers right in the remote sites, but this is a two-man shop we're talking about, with global manufacturing facilities. So they needed something that was easy to use, right? Easy to administer, something that could grow as the organization was growing. Since this original project was worked, they've added 2 more manufacturing facilities globally. And so what we did is take those existing single Dell hosts, right, that were running all of this with VMware, and those little nooks that I was talking about, that's what's running those applications at those manufacturing facilities, right? So each of those, it's a 3-node cluster. They can be racked or they cannot be racked. There's pictures of them both, but they are so small. We have many customers, and on our website, case studies and success stories of facilities like this running something similar on the factory floor. But 5 originally 3-node clusters of these nooks. So we've added 2 more since, takes it up to 7. And they were not only deployed at those North American locations. We were able to send these over to Europe, over to Asia, and everything is managed from a single pane of glass. We have a tool called Fleet Manager we didn't even get to, that does allow you to see multiple scale instances, right, in another GUI. And majority of our customers are using that now. But I mean, you're talking about 2 guys that are up in Frisco, that are able to manage all of this hardware, right, with a cloud-like feel is what it comes down to. And, when we originally started the project, the goal was these remote sites, and they lag it so much, they said, hey, we need to put this in the data center, right? And so we can be flexible, right? So starting at the remote sites, maybe you've got branch offices, maybe you've got clinics, whatever that, maybe it's K-12 and you've got a few early education sites that you want to run on a small footprint, because, hey, we didn't budget for a full data center replacement. It's very easy to use, no downtime on their upgrades. They can click those out, push those out from Texas to all of these sites across the globe. So this is a good edge use case, right? When we talk edge computing, that I did want to hit on. And then the next one, Henry, if you want to click to that, oil and gas, Jason and I, primarily cover the Tolar region. So we talk a lot about Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas. Oil and gas is a big vertical. Energy is a big vertical. We have tons of customers in this line of work. And this was another, hey, we've got all these Dell hosts. They're running VMware. They're hitting us with, renewal quotes that are getting close to $1 million, right? They had 4 primary data centers at the time. There was no high availability at the remote sites. And again, we're talking, the IT and the OT side of the house, minimal IT staff that are in charge of the infrastructure, needed something very simple to use. Something that had that high availability. You start talking oil and gas, downtime isn't acceptable, right? This is a 24/7 operation, that needs to be up and running. And so what we were able to do is, just like Henry talked about, consolidate physical footprint, from a server standpoint, bring down everything that, they had in that multi-vendor solution, something that's out, when I was going, it's one shop, just an issue, you're not calling vendor A, is finger pointing at vendor B, and vendor C, you're calling scale. So we were able to consolidate this to 2 data centers, 1 for production, 1 for DR. This again was a dual proc all NVMe build, and each configuration that are replicating back and forth to each other. They're utilizing Acronis for backups on top of that. But the biggest thing, with this is what we see in most of our customers. Hey, we need to consolidate this complexity, right? And then we want the ability to, in this circumstance, scale this out to those remote sites. The one I just talked about is more of the scale it in, right? Start at the edge, bring it to the data center. This is the flip side of that, right? Hey, we need to replace this data center stuff. And now that we have, reduced our total cost of ownership 30% over the next 5 years, now we have some more budget that not only can be allocated towards projects we need to focus on, right? But now we can start to put smaller devices at these remote sites to cut back on latency and additional cloud costs, and then tie that into our scale environment. So this was a project that, most of these, you're talking about sizing and scoping. We were able to work this, Jason, can attest to this, in a matter of weeks, to get them something put in place, from a configuration standpoint, right? And get this moving for them so they didn't have to pay those crazy renewal fees. So
huge.
Yeah.
Kind of on that note, like what do we like if you are an a VMware customer, and I just wish we could spend the next 6 hours, because then we might be able to exhaust all the questions. But shy of that,
sure.
If you're a VMware customer and you're watching, what do we do?
And what's call turnkey or call us.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
Call turnkey or call us. There's a couple things that we're running from the scale side I can touch on, to help out. There's a lot of circumstances you're going to run into from a VMware side. Hey, we might have just spent all this money on hardware, right? Or hey, we still have a year left on our VMware, right? But they're hitting us with a renewal. We need to plan for an alternative. So if there is an additional technical deep dive, right, a demo, we've covered a lot of it today, but like you said earlier, if we had 6 hours, we could go through it all. These qualified meetings, we will send you that Fitbit. Our marketing team will do that. And then there are a couple other things, as you get further along in the project. Henry, if you want to click to the next one, I can speak to that as it loads in here for me. We're running VMware rip and replace specific promotions. And so we're making it as easy as possible for not just VMware customers. This is the way that it is marketed, but whether it be Hyper-V, Nutanix, physical environments, we're offering an additional 25% off of the software and services, on top of the best pricing that you're going to get from the team over at Turnkey, right? So we're making it very cost effective there. And the other one that we are running, and I think it was at the beginning, we had a slide on it, Henry. We will buy back that for up to a year of an existing VMware contract. And so you don't have to just eat those costs to management. That is something that we will buy back. And so you can make that switch pretty easily. And, if there's any questions after this, please feel free to reach out. We can get creative with you to make sure you've got a solution in place for the future.
Absolutely. And look, like kind of what you said, the next step, we're here to facilitate. I'm a big ambassador for you guys, but one of the best things I can do is just get them, get a prospect, somebody who's looking at it, get them more information. So everybody that is curious about this, wants to learn more, wants to see if they're eligible for some of these promos, or kind of what it would look like even, and just to ask more, just reach out and we'll schedule a private demo customized to your environment, no cost to you, no threat. We're not going to hound you, but if you're curious, one of the things that we love about Scale is y'all are so educationally focused, and you've always been willing and eager to spend the time with our prospects and our clients to kind of just teach them a little bit more about it. Part of that demo, we didn't even talk about that. Part of that demo is really going to, one of the cool things that we love about it is y'all bring in thousands of dollars worth of resources and engineering and tools at no cost to show a customer what they're really using. In terms of throughput and CPU and RAM and IOPS and all those things, and what they would really need if they switch to any new solution. So book that demo. If you've got questions, you're just the slightest bit curious about what you're going to do now, next year, 2 years from now, book that demo. Let's start kind of getting the questions answered and get it going. If you've got questions for me, or if you want to pass, get some questions back over to Nate and Jason, here's our number, 225-751-4444, or just email us at ask@tks.la, and we'll be able to just pass it on to the right person to get your questions answered. And with that, unfortunately, we're a little bit over. I so appreciate like 100% of everybody has stayed on. So this has been really interesting and compelling. Nate, Jason, thank you so very much for not only your time today and explaining this solution and something that's quite honestly compelling and cool, but a little ethereal. But thank you for your partnership and all the support that you've given us over the years to our existing customers and people that have come to us over the years. So thank you very much for that, and we look forward to what's to come next.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank y'all
For having us.
Yeah,
right.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all very much. Again, this is Henry Overton with Turnkey Solutions, along with the team at Scale Computing. And we look forward to helping you not only secure your technology, but empower your business to make sure that we take care of your growth goals and your future and make sure that we get your business going in the right direction. We're going to sign off today. If you've got questions or want to learn more about what we talked about today, we look forward to hearing from you. And stay tuned because we're going to have some other powerful and informative subjects and webinars coming up in the next few weeks and months. Talk to y'all again soon. And thank you all very much for your time today and have a great day.
Thank you.